But another thing I know Karishma is really passionate about is the edtech space, especially in India, but also around the world. And I think you're someone that's very knowledgeable about developments in this sector. For a teacher, and I know a lot of my listeners are also parents and students, Karishma, like for someone that doesn't know anything about the edtech space, I know you're coming out with a publication soon related to education technology. So, can you give us like a brief intro or like a macro insight about what edtech is and where you think it's going? I did read your amazing article on Lightbox Ventures where you've presented some, mind-boggling statistics, about the growth of the edtech sector in India. So I know it's the last 10 minutes. I want to be respectful of time, but I just want to get your thoughts on the edtech space in India to start off with.
Attack in India. It has been tumultuous, especially now. If you switch on the news, it's very different from even just a few weeks ago, right? So things have been up and down. But EdTech, I think, is here to stay, right? I think back in the day there was a huge debate whether or not learning will happen online, and today it's just that's obviously the way forward. Right, even though it doesn't, there are quirks to work out, but given the pandemic, we've just seen a huge uplift with edtech. And also, I don't know how much folks are viewing the news about this, but this is something very interesting to check out. So China and India were the largest edtech markets in the world, right? Just given by population, but also by sheer fact that they're developing countries and they are they view education very similarly, right? They view it as a cycle breaker, as a ticket to a better life, which, many people have very famously said that the two cycle breakers are education and technology. And so when you combine them, they're just very powerful, right? So China had one of the largest edtech unicorns back in 2020 called VIP Kid, which was basically teaching Chinese kids English in a slightly American accent, taught by American teachers, essentially. And the American teachers were making a side business, essentially, out of it. 2020 happened, pandemic happened. Almost every Chinese edtech company started doing well. Same thing with India. But then what happened in China is that a massive rule came about sometime, I think, in 2021, if not late 2020. And that rule basically said that you could not, as an edtech company, you could not profit, particularly on the edtech space, too highly within a certain threshold, and you couldn't charge higher than a specific amount. And what that did is overnight basically kill like half the valuation in most of these companies. And so that was one thing for China, which was massive, right? It had repercussions across the board because many American investors and European investors had invested in China, edtech specifically. But what it also did for India was everybody now looked at India, because India has a slightly more stable economy, if you will, and government, if you will. We're very much a democracy. And our edtech population is also very similar to China, and we view education very similarly. And so overnight, India has now gained a lot of attention from all over the world. And so you have companies like Baiju's that are doing extremely well, and Upgrad, and all of these are reskilling, right? They're all teaching online. Upgrad is obviously for university kids. You have Unacademy, which is kind of like Skillshare. So you've got these various players, and there's some questionable activity happening around it. There's, the ethics is big. That's something that we as India need to monitor, especially with edtech. How much do we care about the ethics when it comes to education and the business of education, right?